opening this meeting. Oh, that's my son. Yes, he wants some water. There you go, darling. So today, oh yes, I'm Kahurangi and I am from Parakore. If you haven't heard of us, please go look us up. We do amazing work. We teach Te Ao Māori perspective on zero waste. So today, the first karakia takes a bit of participation from everyone here. So whether we can hear you or not, at the end of this karakia, you will hear me say haumie, huie, and then you can all join in and participate and say taikie. So me noi tātou. Tuia ki te rangi. Tuia te papa. Tuia te moana. Tuia te tātou. E rongo te pō, e rongo te ao, me tūwhera tēnei hui. Haumie, huie, tai ki. Kia ora. No mai, haere mai, tātou katoa. To this Zero Waste World Digital Summit for 2020. To our organisers, to our iwi, to our speakers, to our participants, to our panellists, and of course to our audience at home. Thank you all and welcome. As I said, it's an honour to be here to open this hui, and I think it's really important for me as tangata whenua to ground us back to the work that's going to be going on the next few days. It's about connection and weaving us all together. So I want to talk first in this welcome about Te Tiriti o Waitangi, and then finish off with Te Waiwaka, a principle from the wonderful Rob McGowan, our kaumātua. So I want to make Te Tiriti really easy for everyone to go ahead with and to implement into the work that, the wonderful work that you all do, we all do. So for me, Te Tiriti, I've broken it down into three really easy things to remember. So it's the 3 Ps. First is about partnership, a true partnership. So obviously a partnership goes like this. We are true partners. It's a two-way street. And obviously that hasn't happened in the past. It was more of an assimilation, which is why we have Te Arawhiti, the Treaty Claims Tribunal. If a true partnership had been formed, then we wouldn't have a need for that. The next P is about participation. It's about having true participation from tangata whenua and people of New Zealand. So participating in the decision-making process. So many times tangata whenua are dictated to through policies about what people think is best for us. So having a seat at the table and not at the back end of things means that true partnership and collaboration is there. So we've got our first P, which is our partnership, the second, which is participation, and our third P is protection. So our protection is our legacy, the legacy that we leave for the whenua, for Papatūānuku, and for the future generations that come after us. So I hope that I lay down this encouragement and this wero, this challenge to you. Kia hiwara, kia hiwara. I challenge you to take Te Tiriti into everything that you do. An example last year of when Te Tiriti was not considered on a global scale for Aotearoa was some wonderfully dedicated and passionate and students organised to be part of the global movement school strike for climate in Auckland. This was organised on March the 15th. Because those 3 Ps weren't considered, it was organised on the same day as the Pacifica Festival in Auckland. This is a huge event for Māori and Pasifika students in a school year. If you're not performing, you're going to watch your friends or your whānau perform, or just go along for the food, you know. Just, it's such a celebration of culture. And because there wasn't the partnership with tangata whenua, there wasn't the participation by having these Māori or Pasifika students at the table, the legacy is that Māori and Pasifika students were excluded from this amazing global movement. Again, it's not to take away from the work and the effort and the time. I know I wasn't doing this stuff when I was a teenager. It's just to identify that we need to, for the betterment of all New Zealanders, to come together and honour te tiriti. It's so often considered a Māori issue that Māori need to honour, but it's a partnership. It's between two partners, the tangata whenua Māori people of New Zealand and everyone else in New Zealand. So I challenge you to take that into your mahi, to enrich it and to take it to the next level. And with that, I'm going to finish this mahi with this beautiful, an excerpt from this beautiful book, Te Waiwaka, Healing the Mauri of the Whenua, Ka ora te whenua, ka ora te tangata, by Rob McGowan, Pa McGowan, as he is affectionately known, our kaumatua. This book is available, he only charges $5 for it. It's just the printing costs. And I think it talks about the weaving together of the work that we all do. So I'll just take an excerpt here. Ka ora te whenua, ka ora te tangata. Te Waiwaka is a collective of people committed to healing the mauri of the whenua. We bring together our gifts and abilities, mātauranga, skills and experience, and networks throughout Aotearoa. Many groups and individuals, all committed to realizing this vision, each in our own way, regardless of culture, religion, beliefs, history. It works by sharing this vision and empowering more and more people to give it effect. We share a common voice that in time will be embraced by the whole of Aotearoa. By following the principles of Te Waiwaka, we have a way forward that gives us hope for the future. Keeping the whenua well is always the first priority. It is what will ensure our long-term future, especially for the generations that follow us. The whenua Papatūānuku is the source of all life. She is the mother. Ka ora te whenua, ka ora te tangata. Caring for the whenua is the first priority. Everything else must be measured against this. Ka ora te whenua, ka ora te tangata. Thank you and welcome. How exciting. And I'll leave you, I'll give it back now and thank you for having me.
Kia ora kaharangi. Thank you very much for our 3 partnership, participation, and protection lesson. Thank you. That's easy to remember.
Easy.
Kia ora everyone. Welcome to our World of Waste Summit. So it's really exciting that we've been able to host this year. And thank you, Dorta, and everyone else for all the work that you've done putting this together. Ko mawau taku manga, ko taranga te moana, no taranga moana aho, ko taku ingoa, Marty Hoffert ingoa. I am Marty Hoffert. I'm the chair of the Community Recycling Network, now called the Zero Waste Network. God, it's hard to let that go after 15 years, Dorta, but I just had to give the old CRN a plug. But we are now the Zero Waste Network because zero waste is our ultimate goal. I think we've got the recycling thing going, and now we need to work on the other end, and that is zero waste. So My pleasure. It is indeed. And our mission, if you don't know much about the network, is to connect, educate, enable, and inspire our members to reach their zero waste goals and to be a truly unifying voice at local, regional, and central government levels. We need to be on the ground at grassroots. We need to be working with our local authorities and our regional authorities, but we also need to be able to influence central government and the decisions and direction that this country's going. Our activities, they include education and capacity building projects, creating opportunities for connection and learning through networking events such as Hui and events such as this. Realities of 2020 and COVID-19 are why we have gone with the online option. And it's great to connect regardless of COVID. So I just want to acknowledge some of our event sponsors. First of all, Auckland Council has a goal of zero waste to landfill by 2040. They've written it into their waste minimization plan. Good on them. By recycling, composting food waste, reusing and repurposing items, and preventing waste in the first place, we'll send less waste to landfill in Auckland. So Auckland Council is working hard to protect land and waste nothing. I want to thank Rothbury Insurance Brokers. We've been in partnership with, they have been in partnership with the Zero Waste Network since 2017 with the launch of the Buyers Group. If you want to know more about that, you can get in touch with Dorta. Since then, over 40 members have joined the group, saving over $80,000 annually in premiums and providing full insurance fit for purpose and reviews at no cost. Our joint aim is to ensure that all members have access to comprehensive insurance services at highly competitive rates. Next, I'd like to thank Envision. Envision is a zero waste consultancy supporting the development of community-led resource recovery in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Envision specializes in working with local government, completing scoping studies, feasibility studies, and business cases, as well as mentoring community-led resource recovery organizations throughout the country. So thank you, Envision. Great to have you along with us. And Waste Not Consulting. They've been at the forefront of providing waste minimization consulting services in New Zealand since 1997. Originally operated by the Waste Not Auckland Charitable Trust, Waste Not Consulting has been employee-owned since 2006 and remains one of the few specialist solid waste consultancies in the country. From waste audits to local authorities, from waste audits for local authorities and businesses to design and implementation of waste reduction and recycling systems, the analysis of regional waste flows, through to staff education and training packages. Waste Not Consulting have done it all. And they've been with us a long time, and they've always been a long time supporter of our Hui. So thank you, Waste Not Consulting. The event is also supported by Zero Waste International, the Global Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives, Gaia. So thank you, everyone. Now I want to pass over to Dorta to kick off, talk about the event today and get things underway. Thank you, Dorta.
Thanks, Marty. Thank you, Kahurangi, and welcome everybody. So yeah, I'm just, my job along with Izzy is to kind of lead you guys through the week, taking care of all of the technical issues that are going to come with doing something online. So I think it's probably useful to just explain a little bit about the origin of this event, and that was that we were contacted by the Zero Waste International Alliance and asked if we would be interested in hosting one of their events in New Zealand. And the idea was to do that as a face-to-face event. And then March happened and the lockdown happened, and it became clear pretty quickly that that wasn't going to be a feasible thing to have international speakers coming to New Zealand to speak about all the amazing things happening overseas. So we very quickly went in and learnt from people in New Zealand and also around the world who have done similar kind of online summits. And I know Tricia from Massey is on the line, and they have I think it's political ecology. They run lots of online conferences, and so it was really useful to be able to talk to them and see how they did it. So Izzy and I have been through a massive learning curve on trying to figure out how to get content online and accessible, and we've kind of tried to mix it with these live events. So the program for the week is that for Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, there'll be 2 panel sessions a day. And then every day until Sunday, there'll be pre-recorded video content uploaded to our Zero Waste World website. So I will definitely put the link into the chat so that you guys can, I might just put the program link into the chat so that you guys can check it out if you haven't already. It is here. And so today's session is this one, happening about reuse systems, and we'll very quickly hand over to Hannah and she will lead that session. And then tonight we've got a session on creating change towards zero waste with representatives from different sectors. So we've got Sue Coots representing the community sector, a guy called Jack McQuiblin who works for Zero Waste Europe, and he does a lot of work with creating zero waste cities and working with local authorities. We've got Jonathan Hannon from Massey University, the Zero Waste Academy there, talking about the role of education. And then we've got James Griffin, who works for the Sustainable Business Network, talking about the kind of commercial and the role of business in creating zero waste. So it would be amazing to see you at the events across the week. And if you have any questions, Izzy and I are available to deal with those either on the chat or also via email, or you can call us. So I'm just going to quickly introduce Izzy, and she's our amazing, she's kind of like the person that is amazing at everything, and I feel very, very lucky to have her. She's definitely the reason why everything looks so good on the website, because she's got some sweet graphic design skills, and she is going to wave at you guys now. And that's Izzy. So she or I are happy to help you out with anything you might need, and I'll just pass you over to Izzy. She's going to set up for the session.
Hi everyone, and welcome along to our very first panel discussion. We're all excited to have you here and get started. We've got Hannah, who is going to be moderating the session, and so she will introduce the panelists, but I will introduce Hannah. So Hannah runs the rubbish trip with her partner Liam, and together they deliver hundreds of zero waste workshops to communities throughout New Zealand. Through her many roles, she researches and advocates for zero waste policy, and these roles include coordinator of the Zero Waste Product Stewardship Council. She is also a policy spokesperson for Takeaway Throwaways. She is also a zero waste expert for Better Futures Forum. And Hannah is also a senior associate at the Institute for Governance and Policy Studies at Victoria University in Wellington. So I will hand over to Hannah and she will kick off the panel.
Kia ora, tēnā koutou katoa, nam hinui kia koutou kua tai mai ki konei ki te ipurangi. Kia ora everyone, thank you so much to Daughter and Izzy for handing over to me, and welcome to this first event for the Our Zero Waste World Summit, a panel discussion on reuse systems. I am completely thrilled to be moderating this panel, and I'm so looking forward to hearing from all of the presenters who are really leaders in this space and then being involved in the discussion afterwards. I also want to give a shout out to Zero Waste Network Aotearoa for choosing reuse as the opening kaupapa for this 5-day summit. It may not have been intentional, but as far as I'm concerned, it's very symbolic, and that is because of the zero waste hierarchy. So for those of you who are new to zero waste, the zero waste hierarchy is the cornerstone of zero waste philosophy, practice, and policy. And basically it just says, if we want to achieve zero waste, we should start by putting all of our focus, energy, time, resources on activities at the top of the waste hierarchy. So efforts to prevent and reduce waste and reuse resources already in circulation before we start to think about things like recycling and composting and disposal. And so by choosing to focus on reuse first and foremost, the Zero Waste Network is really implementing the zero waste hierarchy in their program. So Reuse, of course, isn't the top of the hierarchy. It's sandwiched in the middle. It sits above recycling. But when it comes to packaging, reuse solutions are absolutely critical for being able to avoid, prevent, and reduce single-use throwaway packaging. So to give you one example, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and the Pew Charitable Trusts estimate that globally 20 to 30% of the world's single-use plastic packaging could be eradicated through reuse systems. Earlier this year, there was a report that came out by an organization called Oceana, who estimated that if all of the coastal countries in the world were able to increase the refillables, the market share for refillable beverages by 10%, this would lead globally to a 20% at least reduction in plastic bottle pollution in the ocean, just because it's removing all of these bottles from circulation. And in New Zealand, we have a growing cohort of forward-thinking businesses, organizations, and community groups who are implementing on the ground right now and for some time reuse systems for packaging. And having traveled around New Zealand for several years through the rubber strip, meeting these people, buying their products, and seeing how adored they are by their community, I can say hand on heart that these businesses and community groups have every year avoid millions of single-use bottles, containers, and packets in their entirety from the New Zealand economy. So imagine if this was scaled. So we have 4 great panelists today who are part of that cohort of New Zealand forward-thinking businesses and organizations. We have Bron Green in Palmerston North from Be Free Grocer and Sustain Aotearoa. We have Julian Rain in Nelson from Oakland's Milk. We have Jana Roilica from Single Use Cup Free Wanaka. And we have Philip Barlow in Auckland from the Associated Bottlers Code that run the Swap a Crate system, which I'm sure all of you have used at least once, if not many times in your lives. So I'm going to introduce each of the panelists in more detail before they speak, but just a couple of housekeeping things. So each panelist is going to speak for 5 minutes. And once they get to their 5 minutes, I will just sort of do that. And that means that it's time for them to wrap up if they have not already. And then after that, we will have a discussion as a panel. And then after that, we will open up to questions from the audience. Now, if from now onwards, any of you in the audience have questions, please feel free to start putting them in the Q&A box. If you scroll your mouse to the bottom of the screen, you'll see that there's both a Q&A box and a chat box. Please put questions in the Q&A box. And and for the chat, use the chat if you've got technical issues. For example, I can't hear or something's gone haywire, and Izzy and Daughter will help you out. So questions in the Q&A box. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, who's Bronwyn Green from Palmerston North. So Bron is co-owner of Be Free Grocer, Palmerston North's independent zero-waste grocer. She's also president of Sustain Aotearoa, which is an association of independent zero-waste grocers from across New Zealand. Bron set up Be Free because while she recognizes that policy and industry change in the zero waste space are crucial, at the same time, these can be really slow and the need for action is urgent. And so by opening Be Free, she was able to empower and mobilize consumers to reuse on their own terms in ways that are practical and tailored to their lives. Through Be Free, she's also able to reduce supply chain waste behind the scenes. So I'm going to hand over now to Bron to talk about Be Free Grocer and Sustain Aotearoa and the reuse packaging systems that the zero waste stores are implementing. Kia ora, Bron.
Kia ora, hello. Now I have to preface this with I have 2 dogs who are not as sound asleep as Daughter's very beautiful doggy we saw in the background. So if you hear barking, don't send for help, I'm fine. So I'm just going to share my screen now because I've got a couple of slides to show you all. Bear with. Okay, of course it's disappeared. Hang on one moment. Here we go. Alrighty, So, hi everyone, I am Bronwyn Green, and as Hannah said, I am co-owner of Be Free GROCER, which is a packaging-free store in Palmerston North, New Zealand, and I'm also president of Sustain Aotearoa, which is an incorporated society of independent packaging-free stores across the country. Sustain Aotearoa defines zero waste GROCER as a retailer of foodstuffs, and with that specific focus on zero waste packaging. So in some instances that's no packaging at all, and in other instances it's reusable packaging. So as Hannah said, we recognise that change needed to happen, and that industry change and policy change is fundamental, but we also wanted to empower our community to make changes in their own lives straight away. And we felt that bring your own containers, so the bulk bin model of reuse is kind of overlooked as a reuse system, but actually it's one of the oldest models of reuse, and it's one of the easiest to implement swiftly and efficiently. And I think just to mention as well, there's many reasons for wanting to go zero waste, and for me, it's the impact that our plastic pollution has on wildlife. So that focus is what keeps me going and kind of keeps me trucking on. So this is a picture of our store. So at Be Free, our focus is very much on packaging-free groceries, cleaning products, skincare products. So customers can bring their own containers into our store. They can refill from the bulk bins, or they can refill things like oils, vinegars, syrups, you name it. And then we've got our cleaning product range as well. And alongside those bulk products, we also have a huge range of things like skincare products that come in reusable glass packaging. So the way that works is customers just buy their skincare product. When they've finished it, they drop the glass container back to us, and we organise them all, and then we get them back to their suppliers who sterilise them and refill them. So just talking about Sustain Aotearoa, so many of our member stores have a very similar model to what we do, whereby they have bulk bins and customers bring their own containers. But a couple of our stores operate with a reuse, standardised reuse model. So in this scenario, they still buy product in bulk, but they're pre-packaging, like you can see here, into glass containers. And the customer buys the product in the glass container. They pay a small deposit to have the container as well. Then when they've finished it, they bring the empty container back, they get their deposit back, the container's sterilised and reused. So that's another model that's operating really efficiently. So we are intermediaries between suppliers and consumers, and as zero waste business owners, we see it as our duty to also do the work up the supply chain to ensure that we're encouraging reuse systems further up the supply chain as well. So coming from that perspective, where we see both up and down the supply chain, allows us to see how reuse can be implemented practically at each stage. And then these are just some examples of the types of containers customers bring into the store. So for us, because as I say, this BYO container, it can be quite tailored to the individual, as long as it can be cleaned and it can be reused, it's beautiful to us. So people can bring in whatever receptacle they like and refill their groceries and their cleaning products and so on. So working simultaneously to that customer facing side is also the relationship that we have with suppliers. So sourcing as local as possible is a great place to start when we're talking about going circular. And then it also allows us to push the envelope further in terms of reusable packaging. So we've been able to work with a lot of local suppliers who will supply product to us in bulk containers. We simply decant that into our bulk bins, and then we give the container back to them, they sterilise it and refill it. and then we've got a picture there as well of all the various different types of lotions and potions that we sell, that all the glass bottles can come back to be reused. And a lot of the local suppliers were kind of jumped at that opportunity. They really were waiting for someone to say, yes, this is what we want. So it's been quite cool to see that transition as well. As I said at the start, I got into changing my own behaviour and becoming more zero waste because of my love for animals and my focus on what our plastic pollution, our global plastic pollution problem was doing to wildlife. And that is one of the things that keeps me motivated. However, one of the things that has kept me really engaged and passionate is people. I've built amazing relationships with our customers. This is kind of a different way of shopping, and I think it's really holistically healthy for mental health and well-being and physical health to have that interaction with someone when you're doing your grocery shopping, to know that that person cares and that they are really trying to source the most ethical products for you. But also I've really enjoyed getting to know our suppliers as well, and knowing that by supporting people who genuinely care about the planet and what they're putting out into the planet, we're supporting their families and their business, and that feels good too. And conversely, we're very appreciative of our customers who support us to support them. So to sum up, for me, I'm involved in reuse and moving towards a circular economy because I love people and I love animals, and for me, reuse schemes are a great way to help both people and planet and wildlife. So that is me, and that's what keeps me ticking.
Kia ora, Brian Hoa. Awesome to hear about all the different ways that reuse can look in practice, even just within one store and then across the different stores around New Zealand. So thank you. So now I'm going to pass on to the next speaker today, who's Julian Rain. So Julian Rain is based in Nelson, and his family is the owner of Oakland's Milk, which is a company that sells milk in reusable glass bottles throughout Nelson, Tasman, and also into Marlborough, sold through home delivery models, as well as to retailers, and also through vending machines dotted around town. So over 3.5 decades, Julian has gained an extensive knowledge of good business practice in a wide range of business sizes, from local startups to nationwide mature companies. And he has operational expertise in both the agriculture and horticulture sectors. He's got a broad set of generalist business skills and practical hands-on experience, and also has spent nearly 2 decades in governance in the science sector with directorships with Landcare Research, Surtrack, and the Cawthron Institute. Julian has also always shown a keen interest in the environment space. He's a past winner of numerous regional awards and a judge for the New Zealand Dairy Awards, Marlborough District Council Environment Awards, and the Ahu Whenua Māori Horticulture Excellence Awards. And one of his estimates is that Oakland's Milk each year cleans, sterilizes, and refills over 3 million glass bottles. So that's a hefty number. So I'm going to pass over to Julian now to talk more about the Oakland's Milk model. Kia ora.
Kia ora, and thank you for that introduction. Pretty much has covered all the points I was going to make today. No, just joking. So yes, I'm a dairy farmer, orchardist, and businessman. Our family owns a couple of dairy farms. They are vertically integrated businesses, growing the grass, milking the cows, processing the milk, and distributing it to a variety of customers. So our sustainability goes all the way back to our farms and what we do on our farms and how we run our operations. So it starts there and goes all the way through to the customer. So as you said, we've imported vending machines. So we have 5 of those in the community. We have home delivery, so we're delivering milk and other products, including vegetables, to over 3,000 homes and businesses twice a week. If you come to Nelson, you'll pretty much find us in every cafe and restaurant. We're in over 140 of them in the top of the south. We also run swap a bottle into fruit and veggie shops, small grocery stores, specialty shops, and a few cafes as well. We actually have 2 different brands. So Oakland's milk is pretty much top of the south. We have Aunt Jean's Dairy, which you can find in a number of supermarkets around the country. So there's over 40 supermarkets we supply in Christchurch, also in the lower North Island and the rest of the South Island. Aunt Jean's uses the same bottle. So this is the bottle that we use. It's a European style. We do have to import these. Once we get big enough here in New Zealand, unfortunately our recycling's too good at the moment. And we need about 300,000 as a minimum order to be made in New Zealand. We process about 3 million litres a year. There is no plastic packaging, and it all goes into glass bottles. We have a process that's in sync. So we pasteurize the milk, we bottle wash and sterilize, and then fill our bottles basically in a continuous process. How did this happen? So I was the last chairman of Nelson Milk. In 1998, we sold it to Kiwi Dairies, and which became part of Fonterra in 2001. So when I was the chairman of Nelson Milk, this is the glass milk bottle we used to use. So we used to process about 26,000 bottles a day. So that's considerably bigger than our current operation. We started, we haven't left Fonterra, but we don't supply them any milk in 2013. And so we've only used this glass bottle, which is slightly, if you put the 2 together, this is 600 mils, this is a litre. A very robust bottle, but it didn't have a closure on it like this one's got, which is it's got a screw lid, which is great. We started this in 2013. We only use glass as our packaging. We have thousands of bottles in circulation. Each glass bottle lasts, we estimate, between 200 and 300 cycles. And in fact, because we also, I'm not sure if you can see, we have a pattern bottle. So we sell these to people who want to buy milk in our vending machine. It keeps kids engaged with the milk and the product. We have about a dozen or so different pattern bottles. It's not a label on it. It's actually glass that's actually in the glass bottle itself. So it's really pretty. It's attractive to kids. And because we know when we put some of these bottles into our system and we still see them, they're kind of our markers. So 7 years later, we're still seeing some of these still rotating through our system. We don't use a deposit. We just basically trust customers to bring back or put their bottles out again. And we know we lose them, but at the end of the day, trying to keep track of them is an impossible task. The issue for me is the whole of life cost of plastic. And one of the questions I'd like to pose is, should there be a charge on plastic containers? Should this go through to those people who wash and reuse glass? And then just trying to put all of this into perspective, New Zealand drinks about 1 million litres of milk a day. So extrapolate that by 365, so that's 365 million litres a year. We're about 1% of the New Zealand milk market. So if you extrapolate what we do, you'll get a significant amount of plastic out of the system. Just a quick plug for councils who are recycling glass. Really important not to intermingle glass with cardboard, which is problem in some of our cities. For those people who are wanting to recycle glass, the last thing you want is broken glass inside cardboard. So that's it for me in my quick presentation. It's very rural, but hopefully it's been effective. Thank you.
Kia ora. Thanks so much, Julian, and you've been in this game for quite a long time, so it's good to have that perspective over a long period of time as well. So thank you, and I'm seeing lots of questions coming through in the Q&A. Keep bringing them through, and we'll be dealing with the questions, going through them when we get to the discussion point. So thank you for your engagement so far. So our next speaker is Jana Roilika. Jana has been running the social media and marketing campaign for single-use cup-free Wanaka since it launched a year ago. So single-use cup-free Wanaka, or suck-free Wanaka, is a community campaign on a mission to make Wanaka single-use cup-free by 2022. So over her time with the campaign, Jana's worked alongside local hospitality and community groups, exploring, communicating and advocating for reuse as an alternative to throwaways. And through this position, she's been able to observe what's working well to create behavior change in Wanaka and what is maybe less effective at making a real tangible difference. She's also gained quite a lot of insights into what needs to change, why and how to create a cafe culture of reuse in Wanaka that can then be replicated throughout Aotearoa. So without further ado, I hand over to Jana to talk more about the campaign.
Hello everyone, I'd like to introduce myself and my community and my town with a little video that we did about a year ago. And that gives you a good overview of what we do here in Wanaka. And then I will whip up some numbers and tell you where we are now. All right, let's see if that works.
The town of Wanaka is known for big mountains, big beauty, and now big ideas. The campaign for Suck-Free Wanaka was launched on October 29th and wants to turn the 1 million single-use cups the town currently uses into no single-use cups. It's an ambitious goal, but a doable one, says Brona Parsons.
We just have to get people's mindset to change so they think about what they're getting their coffee in, and they already have decided before they go to the coffee shop that they're going to bring their own or else borrow. For the beginning, our goal is just to get it out there and get some community awareness and to get people talking about it.
Wanaka might only be a small part of New Zealand's 295 million disposable cups problem, but they reckon they stand a better chance than most other places to make it happen. This may have something to do with the fact that the local council awarded the project $10,000 from their waste minimisation fund to get it off the ground.
Wanaka is small enough and it is community-based enough to get this started and get everybody behind it. I think it's really important for us to use this money as part of an education of the locals and the tourists.
Sit, BYO or borrow is the key slogan of the campaign. People are encouraged to sit in while they have their coffee, or if they have to rush off, to bring their own takeaway cup. Failing both of those, they can borrow a reusable cup for $3, which they will get back when they return the cup to any participating cafe. Sharon Matthias from Florence's is one of the cafe owners who are committed to going single-use cup-free.
I don't think it's going to be any more expensive. We've stopped using plastic lids on cups and that saved us 50% of cost. So I'm sure the system's going to be very economical. For the last month, we've warned people, they're very enthusiastic about it. They understand that they can have 20 cups that are worth $60 wherever they want. They can take them back and get their $3 back.
But how is Suck-Free going down with the locals and tourists? Is going single-use cup-free realistic for Wanaka?
I think it's a fabulous idea and it would probably take off really well in other places as well.
I think coalescing everyone who lives here around that goal is very achievable. Making sure that we have a way to communicate to people visiting the area that that's the goal and have them be part of it will be more challenging.
I like the idea, but I think it's going to be quite hard to get everyone involved.
I'm a freelance barista, so I've been talking to so many customers and they're so on it. They're just like, everyone's bringing keep cups now. Everyone feels really bad using disposable cups. So I think it's definitely achievable.
It's difficult to take these conveniences away from people when they've got so used to them. So I think it does take a bit of a behavioural change. If you can make it easy so it fits into people's life, I think it's achievable.
Brona and the rest of the smoke-free Wanaka team have put a stake in the ground and announced 2022 as their date to get all cafes and coffee drinkers on board. But the project has already gotten off to a great start, with 11 of the 37 local cafe restaurants signing up to the borrowing scheme.
Okay, am I still in? I'm still in. It's actually really cool to see this video because this has been a year ago. And a year ago, we signed up to again to the cup lending scheme that is nationwide. And we signed up and had 11 cafes when we started. And now we have actually 2 cup lending schemes in Wanaka. And we have 26 cafes on a cup lending system. And we have 9 cafes that are completely single-use cup free. And it's absolutely awesome. People are raving about it. And as you could see in the video, as they were saying, that the locals are completely on board, and we see that a lot, like really get that community engagement in. We've done a lot on social media. We've been engaging with people there. We have been celebrating everyone that brings their own cup. And we do a bit of the, we also do local media, and that has worked really well. We've done heaps of videos with Yuyo, and we show them in the little local cinema, and people really love the campaign and are on board with it. As someone was saying in the video, it's going to be hard to get people that are coming from out of town on board. And this is actually what we are seeing. This is a bit of a challenge, and it's not just international tourism, it's also national tourism. Quite interesting, some quite interesting reactions there. But in a year's time, we have achieved a really big step down here in Wanaka. And we are hoping that in 2022, we can get rid of single-use cups completely in the town and get most of the people to bring their own cup or borrow a cup from Again or from our local cup lending scheme, Wanaka.
Kia ora, Yana. Awesome. It's so exciting to see a community-driven campaign as well, to go alongside the business perspectives that we have today, and to see, you know, when you have people from businesses to community groups to the general public getting on board, and as well as the cup lending schemes, how they've helped to make it possible for cafes to take the plunge and go single-use cup free, like Again and Wanaka. It's pretty exciting and shows the potential of reuse schemes. So thank you so much for your presentation. And I'm going to hand over now to the last but not least presenter for today, Philip Barlow. So Philip is the General Manager of the Associated Bottlers Co, or ABC, who run the much loved Swap a Crate system in New Zealand. So through Swap a Crate, ABC basically purchase and distribute refillable bottles and crates, and then recover and re-recover them and redistribute these secondhand refillable bottles and crates to breweries for sterilization and refill. ABC, many of you may not know, is 100 years old. It was formed in 1920 by a group engaged in the bottling of ale and stout, who had the vision to see that, quote, a standard proprietary bottle from which the label could be easily removed when undergoing standard cleansing procedures had much to recommend it, close quote. So I'm very excited to hear from Philip. Great to have a 100-year perspective on reuse. So over to you, Philip.
Good morning. I will do my best now to try and share my little preso, although you have just stolen my first slide. Hopefully everybody can see that. If somebody could just confirm.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, we were originally formed in September 1920, so we've just gone through our 100 years. Glass was a scarce resource in those days, and we were formed loosely. There was an agreement in 1918, but we were formed into a company in 1920 on the basis that a standard single-use bottle that could be easily cleaned and labelled would allow more of the breweries at the time within the Auckland region to be able to actually supply the product. And as said, what we do is we purchase the refillable bottle and the wooden crates, and these are supplied as a basis of supply, we into only line and DB at this point in time. Our current terms are the factory gate, where the breweries are actually then responsible for washing the bottles to the appropriate standard. Back in the day, we would actually have washed them and supplied onto the line. The breweries also do the relevant inspections for both the quality of the crate and the bottle, because obviously there is damage, scrapage, and the such like, and make sure that they're fit for purpose before bottling. When we run a closed loop system, we use a deposit. We basically charge the brewery a deposit. The brewery then fills and then on-sells that to the wholesaler. And then what happens is that when a customer purchases a crate, if they do not have a crate to swap, they pay a full price. If they have a crate to swap, they get a discount, or basically their deposit is carried forward. Now, we're not necessarily believe that our customers are doing this for a sustainability factor. It is really just a personal financial perspective. It is a cheap way of buying beer. We do struggle in the fact that we get some contamination from third-party glass, single-use glass, disposable glass, whatever you want to call it. And this can actually cause a bit of a health and safety risk to us, because these bottles are normally much lighter weight than our bottles. And if they do get through into the process, the pressurized system means they can explode on the line. So there's a lot of time and effort being put into actually sorting out and getting rid of third-party glass. The environmental advantages of refilling is really obvious. However, the real issues with it is the collection infrastructure. How do the bottles get returned? And then how often do the bottles go around? Now, very roughly, our bottles go around about 4 times a year. It's about 95 days is the average circularization time, which is 3 months is 91 days, so approximately 4 times. And the issues really are the collection process. We're almost a negative logistics. We're bringing back, and we try and use as far as possible the same companies that are actually doing the distribution for the main breweries. Therefore, they get a backfill for their trucks, so they're being more efficient with the use of their trucks, and also means that it keeps the cost down for us. We have an active database of over 1,000 customers. Now, this is the wholesalers, the bottle stores, the pubs, the clubs, the hotels, and such like that. And we have a network that does cover literally the whole of the country, which has been built up over time. Now, to sum it up, we were formed when glass really was a premium side issue. The successful production of glass in New Zealand didn't actually start until 1922 at the Penrose site, which is now the Visi, was OI until they were bought out this year, site. And our original glass was brought in from America for the first 2 years because there was no adequate supply within New Zealand. Our peak would have been in the 70s. At that point, we had over 28 million crates. That's 336 million bottles in circulation at any one time. Unfortunately, due to time and the introduction of first kegs and then cans and then the disposable stubbies that have come in, we now probably only about 1.5 million crates per year, which is still 18 million bottles. Now, the brands that we have are what people would call stock beers and reflect our grassroots clientele. And as such, we actually see that price is the biggest factor in the fact that we have a successful returning business, rather than the fact that our customers see this as being good for the environment. And that has been key to our success over time. So that's my rather short and sweet presentation.
Great, thank you so much, Philip. And
no
yeah, and great to have that long-term perspective. Also, it's interesting to hear about, I guess, the declining market share, but at the same time that there are benefits beyond just environmental outcomes in terms of cost. And that's an interesting thing too, because we are having questions coming up about accessibility and the cost of reuse how to make this affordable for people. So we'll
in
be
the
interested.
70s, ABC's accounted for nearly 90% of all beer packaged in New Zealand. We are anecdotally now only 5%.
Right. Right. Well, that's a good segue into the discussion, actually, for the first question I was going to put to the panel. So firstly, thank you to all of you for your time. And we'll move into a discussion now for about 20 minutes, and then I'll start to go through the Q&As that people are putting through. Please keep putting in questions and we'll get through to hopefully all of them. My first question really is around, look, all of you are operating reuse packaging systems to varying degrees of success, but generally successfully. And I'd be very interested to know why it is that we don't see more reusable packaging systems around New Zealand taken up by more companies. What are the barriers for increasing reusable packaging, and particularly making reusable packaging more mainstream? And perhaps maybe we could start with Philip, your reflections on that, given that how you mentioned this declining market share, and then we can go to the other panelists. And just 1 to 2 minutes each, if that's okay.
Yeah, one of the big problems that we have now is that from a personal company point of view, our infrastructure for actually getting the returns back to the breweries has shrunk. If you go back to the 70s again, we actually had 19 sites within New Zealand where people could literally walk off the street with a crate and get their deposit back. That doesn't happen now. Everything is done through stores, hotels, pubs, clubs, and whatever. And basically they're reliant on swapping, because these stores aren't keen to give a cash deposit back. There are 1 or 2 that do, but they are the rarity now. So in a sense, we've lost our ability to be able to actually service the general public in the way that they used to. And going forward, to get reusable, refillable bottles back round to their design, means that there's going to have to be a huge investment in the infrastructure behind how collections are done. And that is a big barrier.
Yeah, huge investment.
Yep.
Thank you. Julian, I'm going to throw the question to you now, because honestly, if Liam and I, when we were doing the rubbish trip, had $1 for every time somebody said to us, why don't they have reusable glass bottles for milk like in the old days? Honestly, we'd be millionaires. So why aren't there more milk companies providing milk in reusable glass bottles? What are the barriers, and how could we move to a greater use of reusable milk bottles for milk in New Zealand generally?
Well, the answer to that is there's really only 2 companies in New Zealand that are processing milk. And that's Fonterra and Goodman Fielder. So all the small guys have disappeared, and they've disappeared because of cost and price. So consumers only want to buy staples at a certain price or price brand. And to do that, you've got to consolidate and consolidate and consolidate. So in the South Island, there's literally only 1 bottling plant for the whole of the South Island, which is in Blenheim Road. And it doesn't matter whether you're buying Cowan Gate, Meadowfresh, Anchor, whatever. It is all coming out of 1 factory. So we've set up Art Jeans to be able to franchise that around the country, but trying to get farmers who are cash strapped interested in becoming a processor as well as a dairy farmer is pretty difficult. And when you look at the amount of money that we've spent to try and have a vertically integrated business, it's not for the faint-hearted. We would love to be able to do it. You've got to be dedicated and slightly stupid to do it. So the playing field is not level, and we need to get it more level with, I believe, a tax on plastic.
Right, thanks, Julian. Jana, it'd be great to hear from you about why we're in the situation we're in with single-use coffee cups being so normalized. The government proposing to ban a whole range of single-use plastic items, but excluding coffee cups because apparently there aren't alternatives. So why hasn't there been a greater shift towards reusables already? What can we learn from Wanaka? What are the barriers to achieving the 2022 goal of being single-use cup free?
I think that the biggest barriers is the money and the access to resources. So a lot of cafes struggle because we use systems, or cup lending schemes often have a monthly fee, which is totally normal because they have to survive. Then it is, it's a lot about the money and about the access to those alternatives. So yeah, it's crazy that the government is not including single-use cups into that proposal, which we're trying to get that happen. I think there's a group of people working on that. So I think it should definitely be coming from the top. If it would come from the government to ban single-use cups, there wouldn't be any issue. But it is so normal to live in this fast-moving world where you go and have a coffee for 2 minutes, or not even 2 minutes, 1 minute 30 in a single-use cup that you chuck out. It's so normal, still so normal for many people, not here in Wanaka, but Wanaka is special because it's such a small town and people just get into the vibe of community campaigns. But yeah, it really needs to come from the top, because we still struggle with people that say they can't afford a monthly fee, or they don't want to pay certain amount of money to lend a cup. And it's not everyone who can buy a cup for $40, and we use that. So not everyone can go and bring their own cup. It's it needs to be easier to access, and it needs to be totally viable and totally affordable for anyone, not just for the cafes, also for the consumer.
Great, thanks, Jana. And Bron, there are a growth of zero waste grocers around New Zealand. 2019, there was a 110% increase in stores, and this year there have been a whole number of zero waste stores that have opened across New Zealand. So definitely on the rise, but still I think many people would say it's niche. So how can zero waste grocer, how can the movement become more mainstream, and what do you think the barriers may be?
One of the barriers initially, I think, is same as what some of the other panelists are saying, like that setup infrastructure, although it's very different. For example, in terms of like the bulk bins in New Zealand, the only thing you can really buy is an acrylic bin, which is not obviously not an ideal product to be using, because it can't be recycled if it's broken and so on. So I would love to see some investment in manufacturing those types of vending systems in New Zealand. There's no glass, I've seen in Europe, they've got the glass hopper type ones. We don't have those made here. And of course, importing such things is not an option. So I see that as a big barrier, because it's really incongruent, obviously, to be wanting to set up a zero waste store and have to put product in acrylic bins, but there's just no other alternative. So to me, that's a big barrier that we had to overcome. And the other thing I think is a little bit policy related, in that even though the likes of Bin In, for example, have been around for decades, there's still not really a shared understanding nationwide about policy and how food safety relates to zero waste grocers and so on. So everyone kind of reinvents the wheel, and there's so many different standards. So I think that's a bit of a barrier for public perception as well, of what exactly a zero waste store is and how you navigate that, and so on and so on. So yeah, those are a couple of the barriers I see really in our space.
Yeah, great, thank you. So what my next question was going to be around the key actions that can be taken by government, business and individuals to help boost reusable packaging. So some of the things I've already heard coming through is that we do need big investment in collection infrastructure, probably washing infrastructure as well. Jana mentioned banning single-use cups, and Julian mentioned a tax on single-use plastic. Using plastic as a packaging material. I just want to do a quick fire round to each of you. What is one action government, business and individuals can take to boost reusable packaging? And we'll go backwards this time. So start with you, Bron.
I'd actually written down incentivize companies who are setting up reuse, possibly with subsidizing or tax breaks. So coming from the other angle, that's kind of the government, the part I see the government could play. In terms of businesses and even local body councils and so on, I think it's imperative that corporates and councils lead by example and start actually in-house rolling out some tangible reuse schemes, whether it's for events or whether it's day-to-day. I'm thinking about in a office environment, the amount of dishwash liquid and so on that people go through when they do their dishes at the office, all that kind of stuff. I think corporates and councils can play a huge role in leading by example there. And then from in our space, I think actually individuals and the public are really engaged and are really keen to get involved in reuse. So I think that there's a lot of growth in that area. So I guess it's just a matter of keeping ourselves educated about what's out there. And I think, as I say, there's a hunger from the community at the moment because there's this increased awareness of our waste output. So there's this hunger to reduce that is what I see in our work.
Cool. Jana?
Yep. So as an individual, I think we kind of need to make it the new normal if we can afford it and if we are in a position where it is accessible for us to buy the cucumber without the plastic and to go and refill our milk bottles, then this is what we keep as our new normal. And for anyone where we think they might not have the access to it, if we can help them out and really educate people. We have waste buses, which is an amazing place. So grabbing some glass jars, getting them to the cafes, they can give them out for free. This is accessible for everyone, doesn't cost anything. Things like that just get everyone involved. As an individual, if we do have the power to do that. As a business, I really think it needs to be integrated in any business model plan. So what Bronwyn was saying about a big corporation, that needs to be the new normal. It's not just the corporate social responsibility, it's also the corporate sustainable responsibility. That's just part of your plan. And yeah, from the government, as I said, I do really think it needs to be banned, and then it wouldn't be a problem anymore. Plastic bags were banned and it's not a problem anymore. Everybody down here is stoked about that. So I think if we would get to that big step, then it would solve all the other problems down the road.
Great, thanks, Jana. So Julian, government, business, individual action to boost reuse.
I think it's got to be business-led and also supported by communities. It's a change of mindset, and it's not one hit wonder in this. It's actually going to be a lot of little things. So everything from the keep cups and reusable cups to glass bottles and recycling of other packaging. It is a business led, so businesses have got to put their hand up and say this is not acceptable for us to carry on doing what we've been doing. Then it's got to be supported by the community in buying those products. And then thirdly, government has a role in just sort of tidying up around the edges and not putting barriers in the road for those businesses to lead in a recyclable way and a reuse kind of way. So that's how I see it.
Great. Thanks, Julian. And Philip, over to you.
I agree with Julian. A lot of it is business-led. their businesses. One of the issues about refillables is to make it work on a scalable way, you actually have to have a minimum number of actual bottles and make them universal. The big companies, look at Heineken and Steinlager, they have proprietary bottles which are stamped, embossed with their logos on them. Now, these are global brands with huge IP factors on them. And to get them to change to a standard proprietary bottle that is used by their competitors and other people is a huge ask. So there's going to have to be a bit of a sea change in the way people think about how or what they want to do with their products. But in another way, it's an opportunity for the smaller craft brewers who aren't necessarily so caught up with the shape of the bottle to be able to come in. And there's a huge market there where they can go into a refillable. Then from the government point of view, the CRS, I've been involved with the working group and have done some work on that. It's a great opportunity, but there's also a risk to refillables, because if refillables are sucked into the normal standard CRS and the way it is, what's the incentive for them to be returned to be refilled when you can actually get money for them just to be recycled? So there's a certain amount of care that needs to be around the whole CRS system as well.
And for those of you who don't know, the CRS is the container return scheme that's being designed for New Zealand. So bottles having a deposit on them to get them recovered.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you. All right. So we've got so many questions coming through that I'm going to switch over to answering audience questions. I'm also just going to use my power as chair to just respond to one comment that's come through about, in my knowledge at the moment, reuse is not recognised as having a reduced carbon footprint to recycle. So if we go back to the waste hierarchy, reuse sits above recycling. So the idea with the waste hierarchy is not just about reducing waste, but for each tier of the waste hierarchy you go up, there's the greater potential to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So it is presumed within the hierarchy that reuse has a lower carbon footprint. Now, when materials for packaging are compared, often through things called life cycle analyses to recognize carbon footprint, often the only thing that's compared are single use, so comparing glass with plastic, with cards. Whereas on the occasions when reuse is considered, time and time again, it's a massive saving in carbon emissions. But it goes back to what Philip says, that you have to make sure that they are reused a certain number of times. So you get that break-even point where maybe it's like 3 uses depending on the material, and then you start to get climate outcomes as well as waste reduction. So I hope that answers that question. It's a really important one. Cool. So one question that's coming through in many different forms from lots of different people is this question around accessibility, that many products that are in reusable or zero waste packaging containers are more expensive than those in single-use packets. So we actually have different perspectives on the panel on that. So I want to go to Bron first on this. And is that your experience, Bron, that your stores like Sustain Aotearoa are more expensive? Or yeah.
Okay, so in a nutshell, when we were looking at setting up, one of the things that I identified is that in order to make a real impact, we have to be financially, culturally, physically accessible to the whole community to make zero waste, a viable option. So price point was one of the things that I've really considered. And there's trade-offs. So, our driving goal is waste reduction, but straight underneath that come those other boxes, if you like, that I try and tick, and making things affordable is one of those boxes. However, we've gone with a huge variation in product range, right from local kind of boutique-y type supply, which does tend to carry a higher price point because it's small scale, it's locally produced, and because you're actually paying for the true value and the true cost of that small scale product to be grown or made or whatever it is. But the reality is buying organic, buying local is not affordable for everyone. So we also have a range of kind of the types of brands that you would see at the supermarket, but in bulk packaging as well. So just to take one example, pasta is a really good example of that. We have a completely zero waste pasta in store. It's locally made. It's actually, the flour is locally grown even. It's completely zero waste along the supply chain, but it's not affordable to everyone. So alongside that, we also have, you know, like your San Remo type brand that you see in the supermarket, and we get the biggest bulk size in that we can as well. So it's definitely a balancing act, and for us it's just been about trying to make products available across that spectrum, so that people have choice, you know, choice that fits to their life and their budget. And just a note as well on that is I see it as our responsibility to also offer those perhaps the more expensive products, because for people who can afford those products, if we can afford the product, we should be going for the product that's local and zero waste. So I don't want to not have that available either. So yeah, but it's a balancing act.
Thanks, Bron. I actually want to hand over to Philip now, because Philip, you're saying that the driving force for your customers probably isn't environmental, it's actually cost. So that would go against this concept that it's more expensive to do reusable. So could you talk about how
we're in a different marketplace. I mean, alcohol is a weird industry. You get premium priced product, which is almost, apart from a few ways in which the recipe is tweaked, exactly the same as the cheap product. The brands that go into swapper crates are, as I say, the stock brands, and they're not the Steinlagers or the Heinekens or whatever of this world, and they're not craft brewers. And our clientele really buy it because it is a cheap way to buy beer. I mean, it's 12 745ml bottles. You're effectively looking at 18 pints of beer, and you're paying $40 for it. It's a cheap way to buy beer. That's what drives it, and it works. People, once they've got their crate, they've got their discount in there, and it just returns. And we have a tremendous return rate. I mean, we run at about 90% recovery, and that shows that people are just returning to it and are loyal to it. And I'm a strong believer that this is because it's a single bottle in a single crate. It's done on efficiencies of scale. You've got a large number of units being washed and refilled over time. And so it's cheap for the manufacturers and it's cheap for the customer. And if you're going to do a refillable system successfully, there has to be a financial gain to the consumer. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Great, thank you. Does either Jana or Julian want to talk to the affordability, accessibility comment? Yep, Julian?
Yes, and I think it is a blend. So I've listened very carefully to what Philip is saying, and he's dead right. If you can get the scale right, you can get the affordability right. My bugbear with the plastic is it's not paying the true cost, the true environmental cost of using that plastic container versus the glass container. And that's the beef that I have with regulators. It just needs to level the playing field up. But yeah, scale will certainly do it. If I look to Europe, where there are micro operators doing milk over there, they're making it work because of the support of the community. So somewhere in the middle is a happy medium in making this work.
Yeah. And Jana?
Yeah, I agree there. It's all about the scale. So if I look back into the single-use cups and about cafes going single-use cup free, a bigger cafe can totally go for a cup lending scheme that has a monthly fee, but a smaller cafe might have some struggles there. So there is always alternatives. We use alternatives just around the corner. Like, I love what you guys do up on Waiheke Island with the glass jars. It's great. There's just reusing the glass jars that are already there, make it accessible for everyone. So there's always options for that, and it is all about scale at the moment, unfortunately.
Yeah. We have one question from Nada around, does a reuse system necessarily imply sharing that packaging across many companies? Is there a place for reuse systems to be company or brand specific? And I think maybe I might put this question to Philip and Julian, because Philip, you've been talking about the need for a standardized bottle, but then Julian, you're a company sort of doing vertically integrated, you know, you do the milk and the packaging. So this seems to be a tricky area in reuse packaging generally, that people who are using reusables are actually the same companies that are making the product, whereas usually a packaging company, if they're doing single use, they'll be doing the packaging, not from go to woe. So is there a place for reuse systems to be company brand specific, or is it better if we just basically start having reusable packaging companies? Maybe go to Philip first.
I'll go first if that's all right.
Yeah.
It really depends on your product, and then it really depends on the scale of the product. The issue you have is more around how you collect it, how you sort it, and then return it to the producer. Having brand specific reusable packaging, if it's national, then you've got to collect it from every area, then you have to almost consolidate it, then you have to sort it. Having a proprietary single standard bottle takes that away. You just, with our crates, it's just a bottle in a crate. No matter where you pick it up from throughout New Zealand, it is still just going to be in. And it doesn't matter which brewery it goes back to, because the standards of washing and the way in which the labels are put on means that it doesn't matter who it goes back to, it is easily cleaned. But so yes, you could do it for a single brand, but then you have to think about what is the infrastructure behind how you collect it, sort it, and then return it to the manufacturer to get it reused. The benefits of the single standard use bottle for an industry is that it means that costs are kept down. And if you keep the costs down, then you get the financial benefit, then you get the buy-in. But no, it can be done, it's just costly.
Yeah, right. Julian?
So for us, most of our deliveries are personal. So when we're doing home delivery, business delivery, swap a bottle, we can get away with a personalised bottle, although we do use a standard bottle, which a number of other people are using. The issue for us is around labels and labelling laws. So there's 7 points of need to meet the labelling laws. When you're using an unlabelled bottle, we use inkjet to identify who we are and all the minimum points that are required for food safety and traceability. And that comes off in our washing process because of the type of ink we're using. We are lucky we can do that. I think that we need to go back and recreate what we had with the town milk supply, for instance, to get around this 350 odd million litres a year being of plastic being thrown away. So I think it's horses for courses, and it's not a single rule for everyone. I think you can define what the market is and what you need to do for that market and that product. So that's kind of my take on it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we've been talking a lot about sort of the technical, sort of how the logistics work. I kind of would love to bring this back to the wider benefits of reuse systems for packaging for consumer goods, particularly directing this question at Bron and Jana around what the community benefits are. So Bron, you mentioned in your presentation the way in which you feel more connected with your customers, and Jana, obviously, Suck Free Wanaka as a community campaign. So first to Bron, could you talk a little bit about what, apart from the environmental benefits, what going back to reuse as a packaging model means for the community? sort of more like how we used to do things, I suppose.
Yeah, I think I actually particularly saw the mental health benefit of it, you know, in the wake of lockdown. It is people, obviously a certain generation remember having shopped like this, and so for them it's reverting back to it. But I've also, so yeah, that's where the human connection is really important for people and quite profound, I think, and it works both ways. It is for me too. You know, that's not one of the positive spin-offs of this that I was expecting, but it really is nice to meet people and engage with people who share similar values and care about the planet. So that's one big plus. I think as well, yeah, just the sense of it empowers people to not, this can be a really helpless, you know, the whole idea of zero waste and that kind of fatigue around caring about these issues can be quite overwhelming, I think. And shopping like that is a really tangible way for people to take back some power. And I think that has a really positive impact on mental health as well. I've had a lot of customers kind of feed that back to me, that you know, they feel good about doing it. So we can't underestimate that. And yeah, so I think those are hugely positive spin-offs of reducing waste. But also it creates jobs. Like even, you know, we created a business that wasn't there before, and that creates jobs for people who are doing good things. Some of the reuse infrastructure we're talking about, it would create jobs for people, you know, so especially in this climate, I think there's so many positive implications of reuse systems.
Thanks, Bron. Jana, do you have anything to add to that about the community benefits that come from promoting reuse systems?
Yeah, I think it really brings the community together, and it brings the community to engage with each other. There are so many campaigns that you can involve the schools into, you can involve creative people into it. We have some people down here crocheting little sleeves, and they show other people how to crochet. So it's connecting the whole community. That what we do down here is really connecting, and it gets away from this throwaway culture that we live in. It's just everything is so fast moving, and we actually now we have one single-use cup-free cafe in town for Delhi, and the barista is also an ambassador for single-use cup-free, Monica, and she said it's so good to see people sit down for 3 minutes and enjoy their coffee rather than take it and run away with it and just be in that constant buzz, constant move. So everything that woman said about mental health is such a big factor in it, that's going to be so good if people actually take that time to reuse and think about what they do. So the whole community engagement down here has been really good, and it has changed people's mind and made people actually be more mindful in their daily way. And it's quite interesting what was said about COVID-19. I actually saw a few people going back and staying away from cup libraries and changing back to single-use cups because they thought it was dangerous to use something from a cup library or use a single-use cup. So it was funny because I met someone that I've seen at a yoga class, and I was like, why do you have a single-use cup and sit down with it? And she said, I'm afraid of COVID-19 if I take a cup from a cup library. And a week later, she came out and she said, I bought myself a cup and I love it. And I'm walking around with my own cup now, and I'm actually doing something good every day. And I feel good about it. I feel like I'm giving something back instead of giving that one single-use cup back into landfill every day, because 1 cup a day makes 365 a year, and if we keep calculating, there's a big number. So yeah, it's definitely a lot of engagement, lots of positivity, and good for mental health, I believe.
Thanks, Jana. And actually that part of your kōrero just then segues into the next question that I kind of feel, I'm surprised it didn't come up in the Q&A actually, and so it's quite heartened actually, but I'm going to bring it up anyway just to cover it. And that is really this year has been pretty craptacular for everyone, as we all know. And one of the many crap things to come from COVID was just this feeling of being set back in terms of zero waste, with major international companies like McDonald's and Starbucks saying that reusable cups were dirty, and then that spilling over to all the bin-ins having to be closed during lockdown, and so on and so forth. So I kind of want to put it out to all of you. How can reuse be safely managed in a post-COVID world? Is it safe? What are your thoughts on this? And maybe we'll start with Julian.
Well, I see it as hugely safe when we're doing door-to-door deliveries. And we actually delivered through lockdown. We were an essential service. And it's quite an interesting story that we had a contractor who used to do this, and he refused to go out in lockdown. And so we started our own home delivery service during lockdown, because we saw it was the safest way of getting products to people in their own homes. So I think we can definitely make it safer by having a personalised service.
Great, thank you. Philip, what are your reflections on the impact of COVID on reuse and the safety?
It's had a big impact on us. Unfortunately, our products are not sold through supermarkets, and during the shutdowns, bottle stores weren't allowed to operate, and obviously hospitality didn't operate, only the supermarkets did. So it was a complete blank for about 6 weeks, and it was a big hole. Since then, I'm pleased to say that people have gone back to it. It's impossible for us to do a personal delivery service. We are reliant on the supply chains of the breweries. I mean, at the end of the day, once we've returned it for them for washing, it's out of our hands. I think the general perception, from what I can gather from the industry, is that they don't see it as a big issue. In that sense, the whole logistics network has almost returned back to normal as such. I think it is really more down to what individual public perceptions are, and how that is, I think, is led a lot by the daily 1 o'clock meetings and things that come out of that. So if it can be some kind of reassurance put through that, but no, it's a difficult one. Again, it comes down to the kind of product you're dealing with. Glass is an inert substance. Our worry more is probably about the fact that we're in wooden crates. They believe the virus will live on surfaces for certain amounts of time. Glass is not necessarily an issue on that side, but the wooden crate possibly might be. But I've heard no noise coming out of the market about that.
Great, thanks. Bron, over to you. How did you weather with the COVID-19 with bulk bins and also other members of Sustain Aotearoa?
So of course, like Philip was just saying, there was that initial complete dive in revenue because we couldn't operate for a while when there was confusion, and then we also started doing the delivery system as well. I think going forward, one of the biggest things for reuse is just driving home that, because as well as Philip said, one of my worries was public perception going forward and how that would impact us. So it's driving home the point that the virus doesn't, or any virus doesn't originate from a surface. It comes from people, and people transfer it to surfaces. So there's nothing inherently safe or unsafe about reuse versus single use. It's all about the processes that are in place. So, for instance, in our store, I would, as a member of the public, I would feel much safer about coming into our store because all contact surfaces can be sterilized, and you can't say the same for going into a supermarket and touching single-use packaging and putting it back on the shelf, So for us, one of the key components to get us through that, and I think people really responded to it, was just being really transparent, very transparent about what our processes were, how we were keeping them and ourselves safe, and how we can actually sterilize all those contact points. and what they needed to do as well from their end. But yeah, just realizing that if a part of that puzzle breaks down, you know, if hand hygiene breaks down, then people are just at risk if they come into contact with a single-use item, you know, because it's coming from a person, not originating on a surface. So it's all about those links in the chain and the human interface. So just doing some kind of PR, I guess, on that.
Yeah, great, cool. And so Jana, just to finish with you, you mentioned the COVID situation already. One of the things that came out of the Suck Free Wanaka campaign was during when we went to alert level 3, there was all this stuff about would reusable cups be allowed, and Suck Free Wanaka got straight into it because many cafes were already single-use cup free, so they didn't want to go back to them, and actually devised contactless systems and then made videos about it. So quite contributing to that knowledge in New Zealand. So but yeah, how did that sort of end up going?
I actually think that the whole COVID-19 lockdown situation could benefit our single-use cup-free campaign in the end, because our biggest issue, and that's what we always heard from cafes, were the tourists. It's really sad to say that we don't have the tourists right now, but this could actually be a great chance for Wanaka. So what we are facing now is really just to get national tourists on board. So we have a few challenges there. But apart from that, I do believe that people really understood in those little education videos that we did that the safest way is actually your own cup. Just bring your own cup or bring your own glass jar, clean it at home and bring it and let it fill up, right? That's pretty safe way. No one else is touching it. No one else is producing it. It's just your own. So that's one way. And the other way is really with not having this big, massive amount of tourists, it's really on us to educate our community, to educate everyone that lives here, and to do that education around the country. And then it might be a great opportunity for us to, when the tourist kicks in again, then it's a new normal to not have single-use cups in this town. It's just what it is. That'd be amazing.
Oh, yeah, no, totally. All right, well, I think we're coming to the end of this panel discussion. I want to finish by asking for your reflections on one concept, really, if we can do it quick fire around, and to finish off, and that's really your reflections on whether you feel the future is bright or difficult for reusable packaging in New Zealand and globally going forwards. What are your feelings? How are you feeling about your business and its relationship with reuse and the potential going forward for reuse? So let's start with Bron.
I think it's bright. I think we've just got to decide that it is, particularly in New Zealand with the government that we've got at the moment. It's like, now is the time to push for these things and make it happen. And yeah, it's going to require a bit of a shift in thinking and some innovation, but now is the time. And as I've said previously, I think I'm seeing increasing community engagement and drive for this. So I feel positive.
Julian, over to you. Is the future bright for reusable packaging?
The environment is ripe, and I agree with Bronwyn that if we can't do it now, we will never do it. There's got to be some bold decisions, and as I've said, it's whilst the government is an enabler, it's really up to individuals and businesses to stand up and say, this is just not acceptable. And like us, we've been doing this for 7 years with glass bottles, and it will be individuals that stand up and be counted to make a difference. We just need to do it, get out there and do it, and live true to our convictions.
Great. Jana, is the future bright?
Totally bright. No, I think it's definitely possible in New Zealand. As most of you probably heard, I have a wee German accent. So I've been here since 4 years now, and I'm so thrilled about how people are with reusables in New Zealand. It's so amazing to see that. I go back to my home country and I see so many people with a single-use cup, and if I explain what happens to the single-use cup, people are like, what? Never heard about this. This is absolutely awesome. I think we can definitely make a change nationwide. Definitely make a change. What we achieved in 1 year here in Wanaka is absolutely amazing, and I see a total bright future for our wee country, and I think we can totally make it with individuals like you guys to protect our environment and make a move. Totally make a move.
Great. And Philip?
Yeah, no, it's a world of potential. I mean, if you think about it, we actually used to have reusable packaging back in the day. If you go back to what Julian was saying about the fact they used to have all the glass milk bottles and stuff like that, and all the beer packaging, as I say, in the 70s, 90% of beer in New Zealand was in refillables. So we're not necessarily going to have to reinvent the wheel. We've been there before. It's just the realization now that the public needs to get that it is a easy way of actually being able to help the environment is just to use refillables. So no, yeah, I think there's potential. And I mean, we're a company that's gone through a massive decline since the 70s, but in the previous 5 years to this year, we'd actually been seeing growth again as more people were going back to using refillables. So yeah, no, it's got to be positive.
Great. Oh, that's wonderful to hear positivity from everyone on the panel. So that's great. And I think it's been so valuable to have this conversation with all of you. You all bring so much knowledge to this space and you're all doing stuff on the ground. So it's just really amazing. And I think there's been some really solid wero or challenges put out to government and other business leaders and also the public to really get around reuse. And I just remind everyone who is in this session today that there are some policy proposals out from the government at the moment, including the single-use plastics and hard-to-recycle plastics ban proposals that could really have much more about reuse in them, solid policies around growing reuse. And so definitely encourage people to make a submission on that. It's open until the 4th of December. And also the container return scheme that's come up as well. There's potential in there to do things around reuse as well. And just thinking more and more about how we can encourage government, business and individuals to start to shift our behaviour up the waste hierarchy and bring that up to scale, make it more mainstream. And as we do that, costs will go down as well as shifting a culture change. So thank you again to all of you. And thank you so much to the Zero Waste Network for bringing this together. I know there's been an enormous amount of work from Daughter and Izzy and many others. So thank you. And thanks again for starting the whole summit with reuse. It's really, really awesome. So back to you, Daughter.
Awesome. Thank you so much, you guys. I think it was an amazing first session. Yeah, it was just wonderful to have such experienced and passionate people on this to talk about this important conversation. And there's plenty more to come. So tonight we've got a session, like I said before, on creating change towards zero waste. Tomorrow there are sessions on organics, and also there'll be a video presentation about life cycle analysis, which came up in today's conversation. And then Friday, we've got some practical examples of zero waste and also a panel discussion on zero waste culture. And we've got another international panel with looking at examples from around the world. It's quite an early session, but it will be recorded and put up online if you're not up for an 8 o'clock video panel discussion. And then on Saturday, we continue with some videos looking at really great examples of how communities around our beautiful motu are doing zero waste. And then we end on Sunday with some videos about zero waste design, and there'll also be a replay of a panel discussion that happened, an anti-incineration panel discussion that happened from Gaia. So lots to connect with over the next few days, and yeah, very happy to hear your feedback. Thank you so much for everybody online and the panelists as well. I think the conversation and the questions coming from all of you out there was really, really valuable. So thank you all, and see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.